I want to talk about illegal immigration. Obviously, it's one of the most divisive issues in the United States today and in Europe as well. There's a central fact that is totally ignored by both the right and the left in the context of illegal immigration in the United States. And that fact is that the American ruling class, and I'm not distinguishing here between Democrats or Republican administrations, for decades has been doing things to deliberately force people south of our border to migrate illegally north in order to survive. They have been deliberately forcing people to migrate across the border, and then they use these people as cheap labor. They use these people to keep wages very low, obviously, especially in the agricultural area, field workers and so forth, which they can do because the workers are afraid of being deported because of their illegal status. So that makes it very hard for them to stand up against the bosses with a union or otherwise. Although in some cases they have done so successfully. In New Bedford, Massachusetts, they did. I talk about all this in the articles that I'm posting at the bottom of this video. So the key fact is that the ruling class is forcing these people to migrate illegally north into the United States. So all of the anger that people have for the negative consequences of massive, and it is massive, millions of people. That's what makes it worth, talking about at all. It's not just a few individuals. The negative consequences of this massive migration into the United States are often very real. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but the persons who should be blamed are not the illegal immigrants. It's the American ruling class that's forcing them to migrate north in order to survive. So you might wonder, well, how is the ruling class forcing them? And for details, you need to read my articles. But one of the main ways is with NAFTA. NAFTA made as a precondition in that deal the elimination of the part of the Mexican Constitution, which was written during the Revolutionary period when the elites were yielding to enormous pressure from below. There was a section of the Mexican Constitution that gave peasants some very strong rights to the land that were protective of their welfare. And that was eliminated by NAFTA because of the American ruling class insistence. And then the American ruling class gave agribusiness huge amounts of government money so it could dump cheap corn into Mexico, which made it impossible for the small farmers, whose crop was mainly corn, to survive. They couldn't compete with the cheap dumped corn from the north. And they had to look for work to survive, but the only place they could find work was by going north. Some of them worked in the sweatshops that were created by NAFTA right south of the border, but but most of them needed to go north of the border to survive. And yes, there were problems that were created for communities with a massive influx of people relying on various social services. And there was cultural friction, with people from the South with their culture. And, you have conflict when you have a huge number of people with one culture suddenly living among people with a different culture. And yes, wages tend to be driven down when you've got a huge number of people who are desperate and will work for very little. But nobody is pointing out that it's the upper class in the United States that has deliberately been causing this and benefiting from it. And if that were made evident, there would not be anywhere near the divisiveness over the issue, because the anger at the negative consequences of illegal immigration would be directed where they properly ought to direct that anger, at the American ruling class. And the attitude towards the immigrants would be one of sympathy for being a victim of the same ruling class that is making life tough for American citizens. We need to get some clarity on this issue into the discussion of illegal immigration. Thank you.